Thank you for having me. So what I want to share with you today is a view of the Linux kernel project. Particularly, I want to emphasize on the importance of keeping in mind that you want to grow your projects. Right? So the main point that I want to make is that not all open source projects are hard created equal. So right now you're working in your own projects. You probably have projects that are 1 or 2, maybe 3 guys. Maybe you're lucky working in a project that is larger than that, maybe 20, 30. But I want to show you the scale of the Linux kernel. And this is not just to discourage you, but on the other hand, to encourage you to think that you should set up the conditions of your community to grow to this scale. Because when you go to this scale, different things happen. So bigger is different. It's not just more of the same. Different structural things happen in a community when you have enough people. So you may be familiar with Holo. This is a website that tracks open source projects. They track about 500,000 open source projects out there. Yours probably will be there. And if it's not, you want to go there and register it so they keep your statistics. You don't have to host it there. They just keep a look in your Git repository or version repository, wherever you have it, and they track your activity. So they recently published a study, and this is very interesting. So what you have here is a measure of activity in a project. So is this project alive, or did the guys die, essentially? So what it's looking at is how many commits, so how many projects have commits in the last year. So this is number of days since the last commit. So projects that are in this bottom line are very active. So people are committing changes recently. And only 17% of all the projects that Holo are tracking, only 70% have had a commit in the last year. Right? So, for our scale, if nobody has made a commit in the last year in a project, we pretty much think that the project is dead or really dormant. It's unlikely that they finish the software and it's perfect. That's not the situation ever. So you know that nobody is working in the project at this point. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that that other tail should not exist. That other tail is necessary because that's where you experiment. So you came up with a crazy idea, you put a project up there, you start working on it, and then you figure out that maybe it was too hard or you lose interest in it, and that's fine. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have that experimentation. That is still very useful. The point that I want to make is that there are some very basic community decisions and engineering decisions that will allow you to stay in that 17% and that interesting there. Different things happen when you're in there. This is looking at size of the teams in Holo. So about half of the projects have 2 or less people. So half of these 500,000 projects are teams of 2. And that's very fragile. It's very homey, but it's very fragile. One of them get a job or change the ideas in the project, and then the project dies. It's very vulnerable. And if you look over here, you have to go to something like less than 10% to have teams that are in the size of 50 people. So maybe in this room we have 20, 30 people. Imagine that size of community. There are very few projects that are in that range. So let's look at the Linux community. So they didn't go there where they are today, overnight. It took a long time. But the key thing is that it was a guy just like you who started off. So when Linus Torvalds started writing the Linux kernels, he was 20 years old. And he was a graduate student in a university where the winter was very long. So it's just like you. So any of the projects that you're working on has the same potential of emerging and evolving into something as large as the Linux kernel, as long as you follow the advice that I'm going to give at the end of the talk. So this is the history. He started in 1991 at 2 in the morning, so you can tell that he was very interested in working on it. And he posted this message to some website saying, oh, I'm working in this thing, it's not very serious, just for fun, it will never be as professional as Linux. That was his view. It was something that he was really passionate about. He was not looking for money or fame, he was just having fun with it. And that's very important. But what is more important than that is that he sent this message out, and the purpose of the message was to let other people know, I'm doing this cool thing, I probably will not be able to finish it by myself. It's not in the message, but it's under the text of the message. This is what he's saying, is I need help. This message, as plain as it is a call for help. He's smart enough to know that he's not smart enough and he doesn't have enough time to build an entire operating system. So he's looking for other people who are awake at 2 in the morning, somewhere in the world, and would be interested in working on an open source project. And that attitude is key. So the personality trait that makes Linus Torvalds so interesting is not that he's smart at writing C code. The personality trait that makes him important is that he is man enough to ask for help. and realized that he will not do it by himself, that he needs a larger team, and he has to figure out how to work with other people. And in 24 hours, he gets answers from Stuttgart, Vienna, San Jose, and Sydney. No corporation will be so efficient as to get answers in 24 hours from people out there in that short of a time. So this is the advantage. This is what you have in your favor. If you redact a message that sends the right signal to people in the community, there will be other people like you, somewhere in the world, that will be willing to join your efforts. And two brains are better than one. So the first message is say, tell us more. He doesn't promise that he's going to help. He's not sending money. He's not sending computers. He's not making judgment on the project. He just is interested. And that is good enough. When you receive this message, you want to answer to that message. And you want to answer kindly and say, sure, I will tell you more. You are looking for more brains. There is a second message that is a little bit more detailed. I say, well, I'm busy. I will not be able to help you, but I find this interesting. So keep doing it. And this is another one along the same lines. I will not have to help you, but this looks like fun. So these are reinforcement messages. These messages are intended to tell Linux Torvalds, you are not as crazy as you may think you are. So it's worthwhile to keep doing what you're doing. We'll see what happens. And then 15 years pass, right? So it happened overnight. It had taken a long time for this to gain momentum and reach a scale. But this is what you have today. So 15 years after these three messages, something really powerful happened. You look at the Linux kernel today, and this is the number of days that happen between releases. Every 80 days, they make a release. There is no corporation in the world, no matter how much money they have. Oracle cannot make this, Microsoft cannot make this, Apple cannot make this. And only when you have a massive community can you afford to do one release every 80 days. And it's constant, and it's not like they did it once, they do that on a regular basis. Why can they do this? It's because they have enough people. That's the secret. It's a matter of scale and size and infrastructure. Now, are these people just idling there? No. They are sending an average of 10,000 patches per release. Picture that for a second. Imagine 10,000 patches. And imagine that you have only 80 days to put it into release, test them, integrate them. How many people do you need to do that? And how will you coordinate the work of all these people? So Linus Torvalds knew that he was not smart enough and capable of doing that. One person cannot do this. So you have to be smart enough to ask for help in a way that other smart people and other passionate people will join your project and work with you. So if you take these 10,000 patches in 80 days, that is about 6 patches per hour. Just imagine that ticking. 6 patches per hour, flowing continuously day and night, 24 hours. And of course, that means that the source code or the code base of the Linux kernel is growing in a very constant linear way. Right. So you start here about 6 million lines of code. That's a very decent size in 2005. And then we're in 2012, and they have reached about 15 million lines of code. So again, picture, imagine the screen is scrolling 15 million lines of code. How much code is that? Nobody can understand the entire code base. No single brain will be able to read all that code. No single brain will be able to maintain that code. So humility is a very important trait in this community. And humility is not the word that you usually hear in software geeks like us. So we tend to be arrogant and self-centered, and we think that we're smarter than everybody else, and we probably are. But we are not smart enough to get to this scale. So having the humility and the human kind of connection to talk to the people to join the projects is very important. The advantage is that you know how to talk to other geeks. So you are in the right state of mind for doing these things. So they increased 8 million lines of code in 7 years. That is 3,000 lines of code per day. Is 136 lines per hour. So by the time we are done in this meeting, there will be another 136 lines in the Linux kernel, 2.27 per minute. And this is a proof of the open source conspiracy theory. This demonstrates that we know that all the code has been written by a single monkey in a typewriter. It's a monkey that has never slept in the last 20 years. We have to find that monkey. Now, more seriously, the key behind this, to make this work, the key is having a large enough community. It's not about having the smartest people, it's about having so many of them that one of them will be able to solve any questions. Somebody in this room speaks German. Okay, will somebody in campus speak German? What are the chances? All right. So when you enlarge the pool of resources, the chances that somebody will be able to do anything are almost certain. Will somebody in New York State speak German? Then the chances are really high. So when you enlarge this community, you have the confidence that you can send an email to that community and say, I need X. And because your community is so large, it's guaranteed that somebody will know how to do X, and somebody will have time to do X, and X will get done. Companies cannot do that. It's too expensive. They have to set up contracts, vacation packages, salaries. It takes too long. It's too expensive. So it's all about reducing uncertainty. Once you have a large enough community, you have guarantees that everything will get done. Because you have so many people that one of them will be free that day. One of them will know how to do it. One of them will be motivated to do it. So what you want to do is to partition your time. So when you're looking at your project, you have to figure out what is the ratio, and this is up to you to decide, but you have to find a ratio between how much time I spend writing code and debugging code, and how much time I spend finding another guy or gal that is going to help you. And it's a very easy, you probably can make some calculus on how to do that. If you put half and half and succeed, well, the next day you have to write half of the code that you have to do the previous day. And if you succeed again and again, then things start scaling. If you set up a system in which you go out there and try to find 3 people and train them to get familiar with your project, and then make sure that one of them is dedicated to just find another 3, and then again and again, then your project will scale. That is the kind of smart way of managing a community. We usually don't think about it. We tend to be too geeky, we focus too much on the coolness of the technology and writing the code and the excitement of the bugs, and forget that you are not smart enough. You cannot do it all. No matter how much passion you have for the project, sooner or later you have to ask for help, and you have to do it nicely. You have no contracts. So you have to, once you start having people coming into the room, you have to have coordination. You have to have big wikis, schedules, governance, rules. But that emerges out of the community because, again, if you have enough people, one of those would be the organizing type of person. It would be a people's person that would take care of bringing the pizza and making sure that you have drinks and popsicles, and everybody will be happy. So again, the coordination problem is solved by itself once you have enough people. And you have to create an environment of trust where you will make sure that if somebody is going to work, it's going to be recognized by the work, that nobody's going to take advantage of it or take credit for it. We know how to do this in open source. Everything is transparent, so there's no way to cheat. That's an atomic bomb. Why is it in here? Because this thing, in 1945, cost the US government the equivalent of today $24 billion. That's the cost of the Manhattan Project. It's how much it costs to make the atomic bomb. Why do we care? Well, it involved 40 years of a project, 103,000 people, 30 sites, secret cities were built in order to create the atomic bomb. 3 different countries, and a bunch of silver, and curiously they managed to recover all the silver after the atomic bomb was made, and they only lost this little fraction of it. Now, IBM built the IBM system, it spent $36 billion. So 50% more than what the Manhattan Project cost. Writing our operating system is more expensive than creating an atomic bomb. There is something wrong about it. It tells you that we just have no clue of how to make something, or at least IBM didn't at that point, or that the methods that we're using were not good enough. What method were they using? The corporate method, where they have meetings and they have a schedule and bottom line list of requirements, 10,000 requirements, and they go and write the code, and then they just release it. And of course, it doesn't happen that way, because by the time they hit the deadlines, the code is not really doing what has to be done. Now, today, IBM doesn't maintain the system. Today, IBM is very happy with Linux. Once you have spent $36 billion in writing an operating system, and the next day you can get one for free, well, what would the smart capitalist selfish person do? He will take the one for free, and then he will feed it in order to make sure that it's healthy and working every day. That's what IBM has been smart to do. They dump $400 million every year into the Linux kernel. It's not cash flowing from the roof, it's engineering time. So essentially, they dedicate engineering time and maybe some managing time for people to work in the Linux kernel and make contributions. So a lot of those patches that we see are coming from organizations like IBM, and we are going to go into those numbers. So how many companies are writing the Linux kernel? So the perception of the Linux kernel for the longest time is that, you know, it's some guys eating pizza in a basement and typing code and a monkey. But in practice today, it's not that much like that. most of the contributions to the Linux kernel are paid. Salaried engineers typing under the clock, working in their normal hours for software developers, but they are employed. This is not people who didn't have anything else to do. This is people that are being paid by their employers to contribute to the Linux kernel. The largest fraction of contributions in the Linux kernel are paid for. How many developers we have? About 1,200 developers. Picture 1,000 gigs typing at the same time, without chaos, because without murder and suicide and anything. So they manage to coordinate the work, but they have enough people, and that is the key. Who are they? Well, they have names and they live somewhere. We actually don't care. Have an email, that's the only thing that matters. But what I want to point out here is that no one of them is the man. All right? There used to be a time when Linus Torvald was the man driving most of the effort. And right now, in the projects that we're probably working on, maybe one of you is the main guy in that project. Maybe you do 90% of the work, maybe 80% of the work. That's cool, but it doesn't scale. Okay? And soon you will get a job, you will get a family, you will get a car, hobby, and you will not be able to continue doing 80%. So if you really care about your project, it is your responsibility to make sure that you get more people, so that you, over time, can become 1%. Nobody in the Linux kernel today is writing more than 1% of the lines of code. That is really important. What does it mean? The Linux kernel is indestructible. We could kill the 10 top contributors. 90 will come and take their place. And they are in different places, so the survival of the project is guaranteed by the fact that it's really flat at the level of contributions. And it's not just the top. If you keep going down the list of contributors, it's 0.8, 0.7, so it's really flat. You have a really democratic, really organized structure where a lot of people are contributing and they are surrounded by others. This is also very important because when you're working at 3 in the morning, you don't want to be the sucker who is the only one working on this and the other guys are having a party. Okay? You want to feel that I'm typing these lines, but at the same time, there are 2 other people out there zooming. You can hear their typing. You know that their patches are coming. You're part of something that is larger. You're not alone. You're not the sucker of the project. You're actually one of the contributors. So, again, you don't get here overnight. It takes that conscious and purposeful effort of bringing more people in. Now, who's paying for it? The kernel 2.6 version. 70% of the contributions, we don't know. It's people who have not declared an affiliation to anything. So they could be in companies, they could be working for the North Korean army, they could be you, they could be a professor, we don't know. All right. So this bucket could be distributed anywhere. But it's a significant portion. Right? It's 18%, but it's not as large as what we typically expect when we talk about open source. Right? The rest is companies. People's salary paid with vacations and bonuses. And there is an unknown. So there's a difference between the unknown and the ones who declare that they don't have an affiliation. So if you want to put them together, we could do that and we could claim that there is a 22% of contributions that we don't know if these guys are paid or maybe they're really the monkey or somebody else. Right? But the rest is accounted for. Red Hat is doing 12% of the Linux kernel contributions. It's a lot, but it's not dominant, and it's also very important. Right? So they are not either the biggest gorilla in the room. Well, they are in principle, but they are not too dominant. Right? If Red Hat went away, the portion that they are making is small enough that the rest will catch up. Right? So the Linux kernel could survive the dispersion of Red Hat if that were to happen. And you have companies like Novell that one has to wonder what they do these days, but they are the second largest contribution to the Linux kernel. And the second largest is still 6%. Right? So it's still not a large contribution, it's not dominant in the community. And you go down and it's interesting, so you have consultants, Oracle, academia. This was actually surprising and disappointing for me because I was under the impression that a lot of people like you would be contributing to the Linux kernel. Now, it may be that you are, but you are in this bucket on the bucket above and you're just not declaring. You're using your Gmail account or your whatever account, we don't know. Then you have Nokia. All right, so if you take the 5 top contributors, that's half of the contributions to the Linux kernel. Right, so it's distributed, that's the point. You have them there, just ignore them. Then you go to the version 3.2, and things are about the same. So people that we don't know, they have not declared an affiliation. So it could be like you, it could be your cousin. Then Red Hat is still doing 10%, so it's doing less. And that's good, because it means that the distribution is flatter. that the kernel as a project is a more resilient project. And then you have Intel being after that one is 7%. That's very important because Intel, when you think about Intel, Intel is not a software company. They are a hardware company. Why do they spend their money and the time of their engineers in making the Linux kernel better? Well, because if the Linux kernel is working okay, people will buy the processor. Right? They are not doing this because they are nice, they are doing this because they are smart about business. And then you keep going down, you know, the usual suspects, IBM, Texas Instruments, you may not expect it, but they are contributing 3%. Broadcom, even though their drivers are not always that good. And, well, we already talked about those groups. You can still put them together, and the unknown contributors are 20%. So we can say for sure that 80% of the code in the Linux kernel today is coming from paid contributors. It's engineers that have salaries and hours of working times. And 20% is something else. We don't know. Now you keep going down the list and find other interesting suspects. Samsung, Google up there is 1.5. It's not that much. But they are doing something for the kernel. So Google may not be a software company. They may not be completely open source. They keep a lot of the stuff proprietary. But they know that keeping the Linux kernel alive is important. A lot of those contributions may be selfish. There may be changes that they need in the Linux kernel for the stuff to work better. And that's fine. Then you have academia here, so universities only contribute 1.3% of the lines in the Linux kernel. And then we have Microsoft. It's in the list of top 20 contributors to the Linux kernel. It's a bit schizophrenic. Why will they do this? Well, it happens that they need to make sure that the Linux kernel is compatible with some of the virtualization technology that they have. So again, they are not doing this because they are nice, it's because it's good business practice for them. And so it's for all the other companies. Right? They are not donating time because it's charity. They are doing a business strategy, just like IBM did. All right, so now notice that when you're talking about the Linux kernel, it's not just that I want to make this change and you drop it into a bucket and it goes into the release. Somebody has to look over your code and say, this is good enough, this is needed, it's done well. So you have developers and you have reviewers that look at your code, and then they actually at some point end up in that Git repository of the Linux kernel. And there's this sign-off process. Somebody who is a trusted developer will approve your contribution and push it up the chain. And that's a lot of work. I can tell you because that's one of the things I do in my work. So I don't write much code these days. What I do is to look at the code that other people send and try to make it decent enough to make it into the final distribution. This group of people is really important. Notice that Linus Torvald was not in the previous list that we showed. He was not in that list of top contributors to the code. So he's not writing code as much. What he's doing a lot is looking to contributions that are coming in. So these people become the cohesion of the system. They make sure that the system keeps working and it has a consistent infrastructure, certain level of quality. So that's very important. You have one person that is doing 6% of that work. So again, it's not as flat as the list of contributors, but it's still very flat. So if that person went away, the project will still survive. That's the key. And not only that if this person has an argument with another developer, there are still other 80 that can weigh in opinions and make sure that there is an average discussion, so it doesn't become personal. It's not just you and me talking about how the software should be. Okay, now, some of those developers that are doing sign-off are also paid. And this is also interesting. When you look at what Red Hat is doing, it's not only writing lines for the kernel, it's also paying people to review the lines of other people coming into the kernel. And they are doing 37% of those. That's a very large contribution. So when you think about the large picture role of Red Hat in the Linux kernel community, they are actually the protectors of the consistency of the kernel. Why do they do that? Because they really live out of the Linux kernel being good. And they don't want this to be screwed up, because what they do is to sell services to customers like the US government, banks, hospitals, and so on. Then you have other participants. So Google, for example, does a lot more in reviewing lines of code that come in than in actually contributing lines. So that's an important contribution of other type. The Linux Foundation does review. The Linux Foundation doesn't write code, but they take a look at the code. Okay, and so a little bit of concern is that half of the reviews come from only 2 players. So it would be better if it was flatter than that, but other contributors, so when you keep going down the chain, and here is Microsoft. So they also serve the role of reviewing nice coming into the Linux kernel. So we are enemies, but we are kind of friends. Right? And how that relationship can work is because you can still collaborate with people that are not really friendly, as long as you have clear rules of engagement. Academia is rather low, so much better than Microsoft. So here's the joke: you have Microsoft doing twice as much as the entire group of academic contributors to the Linux kernel. That probably should be Roberto, but anyway. Why they do that is because it's good business. Why did IBM, who is a typical corporate software developer company, will do this is because, despite the fact that they are the largest patent holder in the world, they are the company that files the largest number of patents every year. In 2003, they made more money out of the Linux kernel related services than from all the licenses fees, the licensing fees that they get for patents they have. It's just good business. It's not because they are being nice. It's because by embracing Linux, they managed to sell a lot of servers. Billions of dollars of servers. So they put $400 million on engineering time in the Linux kernel, but then because of that, they sell billions of dollars of hardware. Red Hat, they make $1 billion out of services as well. So here's the key, is that you want to achieve a critical mass. So I'm closing here. The message that I want to give to you is grow your project. Don't spend all your time writing code. Spend some of your time finding other people that will help you write your code. And this is the magic number. You need 1 developer per 1,000 lines of code. If you don't have it now, go out and find enough developers so that you will have enough people to take care of the code. If you have less than this, your project is overworked and you will not be able to maintain itself. Right, thank you.
Any questions?
What people to work on the parts of the Linux kernel that will benefit them? Is that basically the point?
It's hard to know. My guess is that most of these companies understand that having a Linux kernel that is good in general is good for them. So once you use Linux, you know that having a good Linux in general is good for you. So they typically will allow you to work in general bug fixes. But you would probably be assigned to specific projects. So to give you a particular example, Toyota is now a member of the Linux Foundation. So I'm sure that they will put more of the engineering time that they contribute to the kernel in things that are related to the onboard kind of computers that they put in their cars. Software is 10% of the cost of making cars these days. When you buy a car, you pay 10% of software licenses. So I'm sure that they will focus some of their engineering efforts in the things that matter to them. And that is fine, because as long as you have enough companies, everything will be taken care of.